The Morness Show with hosts Sil and Beena is about to bring depth and value into your life.
And welcome to the Morness Show with Sil and Beena, and we are back again. Yes, last weekend it was something like it happened with us, and we just followed the attunement. Anyway, we are so excited to be here again. Welcome to the Morness Show, Sil.
Yes, thank you, Beena. You too. Welcome, welcome. Good morning to you also.
Yes. And today we are going to talk about, yes?
That's what I wanted to hear. What are we going to talk about?
Yes, today we are going to talk about the deliberate living. This is the main thing of Moreness-Culture, and this is what we are going to talk about. And Sil is going to share, yes, the basic rules, the basic fundamental, the basic pillars of Moreness-Culture. So please, Sil, continue.
Yes, that's what we've been doing. We've been taking, in the last few shows, we've been taking separate sections in specific focuses, and this week it's on deliberate living. You know, the first two shows was about Moreness and then about Moreness-Culture. But within Moreness-Culture, what does it comprise? What makes it a culture? What makes it different? What stands out in it, and what really is important in it? Deliberate living is such a part of Moreness-Culture, a huge part, and it's massively transformative. When we live deliberately, we're doing things because we want to. And this changes our reactivity, our emotions, our feelings, how we relate to things. And of course, it profoundly changes our motivation. We're doing something because we want to do it. And when we do it deliberately, it adds kind of a power to what we're doing. It adds that energy. It adds that deliberateness of living, which, boy, it's massively enhancing. Right, Beena?
Yes, I assume when you are saying that Moreness-Culture is about deliberate living, that generally we are not living deliberately. Is this so?
Correct. Absolutely. All right. So let's go into this, right? So when we are living deliberately, we are choosing choice deliberately. We are choosing choice deliberately. In other words, we are not just doing things because of default, because of habit, because of mindlessness, because of should, supposed to, must be. We are deliberately choosing to choose. We are deliberately choosing to choose. Yeah. And therefore,
Aren't we regularly in general?
No, we just do things and we don't even know why. We just do it just because. You ask people, why did you do that? I don't know. I don't know. Right? Haven't you seen that very often? Well, say, well, isn't that what everybody does?
Should? The should
No, I'm just
mindset?
saying. No. As an answer to their question, right? If you ask people, why did you do that? They say, well, I don't know. Or they'll say, but isn't that what everybody does? Right?
Wow.
Haven't you heard that? When people say that? When you say,
Yes.
well, but isn't that what everybody does? Then you're not really choosing deliberately. If they say, well, isn't that what you're supposed to do? Note well, they don't say, but you're supposed to do that. Sometimes, yes. But generally the answer will be a question. Isn't that what you're supposed to do? Or isn't that what you should do? If you're asking that question, it implies, well, you're not entirely sure, and you just kind of did it without thinking. Yeah? So yes, they may choose, but to choose and to choose deliberately are two different things. I'm sure they
Wow, this
chose,
is super interesting. Yes,
right?
because whenever we are making a choice or making a decision about anything, we assume, generally we assume that this is what we are doing.
Yeah.
And when you
Yeah.
are saying deliberately choosing a choice, so this is something like that,
Right.
we were not doing that.
No, I mean, we have to pay attention to see if our choice was a choice deliberately made. Yes. All right. Just take simple thing, eating. Yeah. I go and I eat, and well, I open the fridge and I choose stuff. But I may just okay, whatever, and my mind could be elsewhere, and I just take it out and I eat, and it's sort of there's not much consciousness there. But when you deliberately go, that's a whole different deal. Now your whole meal is different. Your whole choice is different. Driving is another instance. I may drive from here to there, and when I get there, I don't even remember driving because I wasn't aware. And I didn't make those choices with conscious deliberation. I still chose where to turn and what not to turn, right? but it wasn't a deliberate, conscious choice. That's the difference here. We can choose, but not with that conscious deliberation. We're still choosing, but not consciously, not deliberately. Let me add one more massive point to this. Yeah? When it
Yes,
comes
please.
to our lives, and we've gone over this before, and we say, okay, it's usually in the context of accepting responsibility. Now, when we say deliberate living also involves accepting full capital R responsibility for living. Why? Because we've chosen to do so. So I've asked you this question before, and I've asked many people this question, right? When we were doing the interviews with Jill, when we did that whole series, I asked Jill this question, right? I said, you knowing right now, do you know, are you aware that in the future, weird things could happen, ugly things could happen, mean, nasty, horrible, irrational, illogical things, lousy things, right? Are you aware in the future this could happen? Are you aware, Beena, in the future that this could happen?
Yes, it's like a back of my mind. Of course, anything
Right,
is possible.
right.
So
But now
yes,
that I say it to you, you are even more
yes, of
consciously aware,
course,
right? But you know, we
exactly.
all know this, right? I mean, you can't say you
Yes.
don't know this, right? I mean, you could ask it in the negative. Say, are you unaware
Yeah.
that this could happen? You can't honestly
No,
say you were
no,
unaware, right? Okay. So you
no, no,
know
no.
this stuff could happen. So right this very moment, right now, knowing that all this stuff could happen in the future, right now, knowing that it could happen, do you choose to continue and remain alive?
Oh yes.
So
Oh
even though
yes.
that stuff could happen, even though all the stuff that I said could happen, you still choose to remain alive?
Oh yes. Oh
Therefore,
yes.
if that stuff should happen, can you legitimately complain?
No.
No, you can't, because
Wow.
you chose to continue living. Okay, so that's a side benefit. But now, the
Hmm.
way I've asked this question, you've deliberately chosen to remain alive under certain conditions, not just to remain alive, but consciously knowing what could possibly be, you've deliberately chosen to remain alive. You're not like, oh, well, stuff happens and say, oh, well, yeah, I kind of knew, but I didn't really expect it. Oh, whatever, make excuses and complain. No, you deliberately chose. You can't just say, well, I was just kind of going along. I didn't really choose. Yeah. Most people could say that. They didn't deliberately choose to continue living.
This.
But you
Oh
have.
yes.
So you've deliberately chosen to continue living, and therefore you've also
Wow.
deliberately chosen to accept full responsibility for your life. This is empowering. And it's
Wow.
another major part of Morness-Culture. Not just deliberate living, but part of deliberate living is deliberately accepting and choosing to be responsible. Accepting responsibility, choosing to be responsible.
But you just in a way, just in flow, you just set up two things together, like responsibility and empowerment
Yes, yes. When
together.
we right, because when we accept full responsibility, this empowers us. Why? Because part of
Hmm.
deliberate living is I'm in charge of my life.
Wow. Wow.
Right
Responsibility is
in
a
that
huge word.
moment, right in that moment where you chose, did you not empower yourself by saying, I'm in charge of my life? I chose. If I choose, I'm in charge. Yeah.
Oh yes.
All right, let me give
Oh
another
yes.
example. Why
Hmm.
deliberate living is empowering. Deliberate living, when
Hmm.
we choose, deliberately, consciously choose, we are able to do things that we would not otherwise be able to do. It empowers
Please
us. For
explain.
instance, okay, my favorite example, I've used this many times before, but it's a really good example and one that everybody's aware of, on the show Survivor. In every episode that I ever watch, they always have the eating, right? Or every show, every season, they have the eating episode, right? Where they got to eat this really
Mhm.
horrible, terrible food. Now, in normal circumstances in life in general, those people wouldn't eat this. And you can see that they really, really, really don't
Not so
fancy
fun.
this food. And it's not that it's not like, some people, they can eat everything, omnivores, right? And my brother's kind of
Hmm.
like it. He can pretty much eat anything. I remember one day he put pickled onions on peanut butter just to experiment.
Mhm.
He wanted to see what it tastes like. Anyway, So some people, they are able to kind of eat everything, but this stuff is gross to eat for the participants. But yet they eat it. Why? Because they are doing so deliberately. Sometimes they opt out and they say, okay, I forfeit, right? Occasionally they'll say, nah, sorry, I'm not going to do that. And they forfeit and they lose whatever points or whatever they get. But when they do it, you can see them struggling and you can see it's awful, but they are able to eat that food. Why? Because they are doing so deliberately. They choose to do so. They choose to do so. Yeah. Now, most people say, oh, you'll never catch me doing that. And I come along and say, oh, you know what? I just won the lottery. I'll pay you $1 million or 2 or 10 million to do that. Okay, no problem. Sign me up. Right? In other words,
Yes.
people assume they can't do things, but provide enough motivation, and you can. Now, that's the magic of deliberate living. You leverage your own motivation. The very fact that I chose to do it is motivating when it comes to the action.
You leverage your own motivation. Very interesting.
Yeah.
And this is something, if we are aware of it, deliberately aware of it, it can be life transformative.
And
We
that's
can
why
leverage our motivation.
that's exactly why Morness-Culture is a deliberate living culture. It's not just a culture where you're going along, la, 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 and you just follow along and you do whatever. And, this is what you're supposed to do. This is what you should do. And this is what you must do. These are the traditions. There's no such thing as a tradition in Moreness-Culture. Not in the usual sense of it. Because traditions are stuff that were set up long ago and they pretty much complete. They don't evolve. They don't change. They just repeat over and over. And you do it
Yes.
because it was traditional. Because
Oh,
it's
yes.
traditional. In deliberate living culture, Morness-Culture, you're doing it because it makes sense, not because it's traditional. And that sense could change. And of course, that sense, the sensibility of it can change from day to day. Yeah. For instance, what I wear, I don't wear traditional clothing. And most people don't, in most cultures, they don't wear their traditional clothing that you always see on the photos and National Geographic, whatever. They don't wear this every
Yeah.
day, right?
Yeah, of course. Yes.
But in just regular living, in any culture, my clothing changes. My sensibility of my clothing depends on what I'm doing. It's appropriate. If I go to the beach, I wear beach clothing. I go to business, right? So it changes depending.
Yes.
So appropriateness makes you change things. But in culture, specifically in tradition, when it comes to culture, there isn't that change. There isn't that flexibility. You do it because it is traditional, not because it makes sense, not because it's appropriate, but because it is traditional. And so many things were established way back when, and they stay as a tradition, even when the reason for it has long since gone, when the appropriateness is long since gone, when whoever set this thing up in the first place was completely and utterly crazy. They are like, I don't know. There is a big thing in many of the African cultures with genital mutilation of young women, right? And this is like, it's a horrible thing. Whoever set this up, I don't know, hierarchy, superiority, misogyny, who knows what was going through their mind, right? But it got stuck as tradition. And to overcome that, to overcome tradition, man, it's a major battle. And people in the culture who themselves don't like it, they don't want to go against tradition because this is a big no-no and you're really conditioned to do that. In other words, there's no deliberateness. You're living according to should, supposed to, must be. These are very, very limiting. Now, I've used an extreme example. Let's go
Yes.
into
Yes.
a more uh, ordinary
Subtle. Subtle.
example that we
Yeah,
find
subtle.
in everyday life. I think we have to go to a commercial.
Okay.
I
Okay.
didn't see
Yes, we
that. We
will
were
go.
so involved. I
Yes.
didn't see that. All right. See you soon. See you soon.
No, we will continue after a short commercial break. But you bring us such a like really huge analogy because there's just so much coolness about what people are doing on National Geographic, and we will continue after that because we don't need to have it like really it's true, it's fake, it's made up. No, we can extract value in bonus culture. So yes, it is something that yes, the bonus culture can give you value even if it is not there. We will continue after a short commercial break.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorick, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorick has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back to the Morness Show with Sil and Beena. And before going to the break, Sil was sharing such profound points about deliberate living and taking full responsibility. And of course, as a common person, my heart was like, oh my God, it is going to be like full of responsibility and burdensome. But he also mentioned that it is empowered. It is empowerment right there. So yes, please
very
continue.
empowering. Yeah, very,
Please
very empowering.
continue.
All right, so I was using an example of where our choices aren't conscious and we do things just because. Now, I used an extreme example of tradition, but let's take it in a more ordinary example of should or supposed to, which is your cultural tradition, but it's not something that is traditional, right? It's just a part of the culture. But as examples of where we aren't acting deliberately. Go to any school. And you see the kids being nasty to other kids and being superior and putting the kids down. Even if they aren't physically bullying, they bully with words and with attitude.
Oh, yes.
Where did they get this from?
No idea.
Did anybody ever tell them you must be mean to other children? You must be nasty. You must make snide comments. You must be snarky. You must put them down. Did anybody ever?
So.
Right, exactly. I mean, I never heard any adults or any parents teaching their kids specifically to do this. So where did they get this from? Are they choosing consciously and deliberately to do this? No, they're just doing it because, well, isn't that what you do, is supposed to, should? They don't even think about it. There's no consciousness to it whatsoever. It's just behavior they've picked up. They've seen superiority around them in adults, not in that form necessarily, but in some way, and they are just repeating what they've seen, they're copying it, and they're just exaggerating it, because that's the nature of children, right? So there's no consciousness to it. There's no deliberateness to it. And of course, all their power goes with it. You are behaving according to somebody else's rules, somebody else's ideas, not your own.
Wow, yes.
That's terrible, isn't it? That's terrible.
Exactly.
You're unempowered. Yeah. And today we see this on the internet all the time. Sheeple. Don't be a sheeple. Don't be sheeple, people. All this, right? Don't just be. I'm not saying you must go and be a complete maverick and be completely anti-society and be a revolutionary. You don't have to do that. You can choose to live independently and have independence of being. Why? Because you're choosing what you do. What I choose might be the same. I might choose to go and get married and have children and have a regular job. I'm choosing to do so. I'm not doing so because I should and I'm supposed to. I'm choosing to do so. You when
But
we
it's not that easy, Sil, what you are saying, because it's a lot of queuing out there from, of
oh
course,
yes, oh yes,
from culture, from
well,
religion, and of course from
yeah,
family
yeah,
upbringing and
yeah,
your circle. A lot of queuing. It's not
yeah.
easy to do that,
Nope, nope,
really.
nope. It is not easy. However, is it worthwhile? Hell yeah. So
Mm.
anytime we engage in Morness-Culture, sorry, when we engage in something that is worthwhile, typically there's a lot of effort involved. Yeah, that's just the way it goes.
Mm. Oh,
Especially
yes.
when you have to change your entire way of thinking, your entire way of being, when you have to go against your habits and your assumptions and your convictions and all of the stuff, right? Your beliefs. This takes a lot of doing, but is it worthwhile? Absolutely. And this is why we are sharing about Moreness-Culture and why we set it up, why we've created this, why the whole concept of Moreness is coming to provide an alternative. And it's an alternative that's not a belief-based alternative. That's very
Wow.
important.
Oh,
There are many
yes.
alternatives to regular culture out there. I mean, you can go be a monk if you want in various religions all around the world, right? Almost all
Yes.
religions have monks of some kind. That's an alternative culture, alternative religion. Problem is, I guarantee you, when you go to those monasteries, you're going to find a hierarchy there. Superiority paradigm in play, I mean, between you and a novice and then the older monks, and they might do things to you. Okay, they might have a
Oh,
big, yeah.
oh.
See what I mean? So
Yes.
when we understand superiority paradigm as the abstract basis for almost all cultures that I'm aware of, at any rate, right? Now we start to say, ooh, but doesn't matter whether I go into the monastery culture or I go into a sports culture or an artist colony or whatever. If there's still hierarchy there, no. Sadly, this is very much brought out by communes. Yes, in the 60s,
Mhm.
communes became a really big thing. Yeah, why? Because of the idealism of it. We're going to share everything, and it was all about sharing, right? And not being obsessed with ownership and having. So there was a lot of idealism involved. Now, depending on the commune and the particular people who set it up, the ideals varied. Yeah. However, all had that idealism in common. Those communes, almost all of them failed. I don't know of any examples of communes that are still existing, that were started up, that have survived, and that ongoing, and that are thriving with a consistent community. There are communes that have been going for a long time, but they basically have a revolving door of people, like the communes in
Uh-huh.
Israel. Basically, you go there and you essentially free labor, right? Or very cheap labor.
Hmm.
And you do all the dog work, the lousy work, the grunt work, and then when you've had your time, you've had your experience in the commune, off you go again. Right? So, okay, they work, but that's not a community. That's a different thing. Those who run the commune, they benefit from those people who come in essentially at the bottom and do all this stuff, right? So
Yes.
it's kind of not. It's a bit of a manipulation of the idea of a commune,
Mm.
right? So I'm not talking about
Mm.
those. I'm talking about where the idealism actually was fulfilled. They all failed because of superiority paradigm. That's
Mm.
why they failed, right? Because inevitably, despite the ideals, because there wasn't a conscious, deliberate choice to do this and to unhook from superiority, you inevitably had people sorting out into hierarchy. And whenever there's hierarchy, there goes all your idealism, right? People
Oh,
are,
yes.
I'm more important. I'm putting you down. I'm sucking up to the one above me. All of this stuff. It corrupts everything, right? And there goes your idealism. So to make your point about change, that and it's effort. If we really want to change, we have to change deep down. We have to look at the core paradigms. We have to look at the culture itself. Hierarchy, superiority is in all cultures. Yeah. And now this is the point
Hmm.
with Morness-Culture. We are saying, no, we are not going to do this. We are going to look for Morness. I don't care how better or worse you are. I'm enjoying your Morness. Everybody has Morness to them. Part of Morness-Culture, as we said in previous shows, was to celebrate difference. Most cultures, they'll teach, well, in some it's like they'll acknowledge difference. right? When you have like real,
Yes.
especially very powerful hierarchy cultures and cultures that are
Yes.
very superior and think a lot of themselves. All right, you know, they don't want to look like jerks, so they say, well, we'll acknowledge the difference. Then you may have a bit more of an enlightened culture, say, well, you know, we accept difference. Yes, we tolerate
Yes.
difference, we accept difference, and now they think they're very enlightened. Yeah, you got to
Hmm.
celebrate difference. Now you're really talking, right? So this is where we're at in Morness-Culture. And again, somebody might say, but so aren't you just putting down other cultures? Well, yeah, kind of, because I'm pointing out their negatives. And yes, am I saying Morness-Culture is better? Well, to me it is. You may prefer it if you're into
Yes.
dominance, if you're, you know, okay, that's your thing. Do you actually get real value or you just get believed value?
Hmm.
Morness-Culture, it's about actual value, not believed value. Yes. Hierarchy and status. Man, you believe you get the value, but take dictators. The pinnacle of hierarchy, a dictator, and actually look at their
Hmm.
lives. Very miserable. They're always afraid. They're always insecure. Everybody's always trying to get their job. Yeah. And they do. They get assassinated on a regular basis, or thrown out of office, if not
Hmm.
assassinated, right? They come to a sticky end, end up in jail, whatever. It's a miserable existence, you know. It's
Hmm.
not very fun at all. But they believe it to be, well, I'm in charge, I'm the one in power. It's just a belief, it's just a belief. The actuality or day-to-day living, you've always got to be looking after your shoulder, being insecure, being nervous, being paranoid. No. Actual value, real value. But in Moreness-Culture, none of that, right? And we are celebrating
Hmm.
your difference. I don't care how much or how little you know, it's irrelevant. Yeah, I get value either way. I'm sharing what I know. If you don't know what I'm sharing about, then I get benefit from you asking me questions, or I get benefit from me explaining it. If you're interested, of course,
Hmm.
explaining it in a way that makes sense to you, because different people, different explanations. I can go on about
Exactly.
the benefits, but I don't want to go too far into that because I want to get back to deliberate living, right? Which is about the
Hmm.
choice and us choosing to live so. So now we say, okay, if I'm choosing deliberateness, then am I not also self-determining?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, take most people in a culture. Are they self-determining? Do you think so? Are they truly
No.
self-determining? No, they're not. They're
No.
determined by the religion, by the culture, by authority, by their parents, by the teachers, whatever, right? By their friends, their peer group. Where are you self-determining? How many people do things that they do not like to do because of peer pressure? Peer pressure is a massive, massive problem in the world, yes?
Even when we don't accept it, still, yes.
Exactly. That's the point. But when you start living deliberately and you choose and you understand these mechanisms, not a problem. You know, I grew up in a culture in which alcohol was a very prominent big deal. And when I was young, I was a stupid kid. You know, I thought it was cool, but the belief value and the actual value did not match. And like I was saying, I think I don't know if I said it in one of the shows before or in our lives, but I said for me, I can't go, I can't perpetuate and keep doing something that has belief value if the actual value doesn't work. Like I think I gave the example of Brill cream in my hair, right? This is back in the day when
Yes.
Brill cream was a thing. Oh my God, I thought this is going to be the coolest thing ever. And, you know, I didn't have any money as a kid, right? I almost never had
Hmm.
money. So I had to kind of scrounge and find money. I couldn't save up because I didn't get money to save. I had to just find it. Anyway, I finally was able to acquire a can of Pro Cream. All
Hmm.
excited, put the stuff in. But the first time I went to go and sit down, like, oh, I can't rest my head against the back of the seat there because I'm going to get grease all over the chair. And then when I had to sleep, oh my God, it made such a mess of my pillow. This was just horrible. It was just terrible. That was that was the end of Bro Creep. Sorry, no, that's not going to work.
But
But
this is the fun example. But yes, of course,
right,
we all do that, and I'm saying that all it's with the thing with the qualifier that okay, not necessarily. Most of us, we do the things just to follow that, just to be included,
exactly,
because
exactly,
it
exactly.
needs a
But
lot. It needs a
right,
lot of courage, and
exactly,
of
it
course, it
does.
needs a lot of energy
But
also
also a
to
bit
do
of strategy,
something.
Beena. Yeah. That's I was
I mean,
actually
this
going
is
somewhere with my story. I got sidetracked on the brokering, but I was talking about drinking, right? So likewise, I thought drinking was very cool and all this, right? Anyway, it doesn't work for me personally. My body doesn't like it. It treats it as a poison, which it really is. You have to build up a tolerance. So my body said, no, sorry, you don't like this. I used to enjoy it more when I was younger, but as when I got into my 20s, my body really started saying no, no, no. But anyway, so
Mhm.
okay, I just gave it up, right? But then you hang out with friends and you're not drinking. And of course, hey, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you drinking? That's the question. What's wrong with you? Why aren't you drinking? Yeah.
Wow.
Now,
Wow.
now, of course, now I've deliberately chosen not to drink, and I want to make an example here, an illustration of how I dealt with that, of saying that
Mhm.
when it comes to peer pressure, there are ways you can strategically deal with it. We've got to develop a little bit of capital D diplomacy and strategy. Both of those are, again, part of Moreness-Culture, right? So we're not just going along and doing things. When you're being deliberate, strategy is very important. Very, very important. This is major part. Without strategy, we're kind of sitting ducks. We're dead in the water. So we need to live strategically. And I don't mean it in terms of threat. I mean strategically, like whatever you do, be strategic about it. Be sensible about it, in other words. All right. So, and also this capital D diplomacy. Understand where other people are coming from. When they say to me, hey, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you drinking? They take my not drinking as a criticism of them.
Wow.
You say, but, how does that work? Well, it's mentality of opposites. One of the conceptions in our dictionary of power, and part of Moreness-Culture is the dictionary of power. I think we mentioned it before, but we'll mention it again, right? So, mentality of opposites. With hyphens, it's a thing. What is mentality of opposites? It says, if something is not something, then it has to be, it must be, its opposite. In other words, if I'm drinking and drinking is good, and you're not drinking, yeah, well, then, and you think that's good, well, we can't both be good, so then you must think I'm bad. See? If I do what's opposite to you, then there's a conflict.
Mm.
If I think it's good and it's opposite to you, then automatically the assumption is that I think what you're doing is bad. Yeah. So
Wow.
once you
Comparison.
understand that, now look at it in the example of the drinking. When I get and we,
Okay, yes, yes, we will
oh,
go into detail about these things because this is very interesting that we get into comparative mindset, not only that, but also into personal comparison instead of that act.
yes,
So
yes,
thank you so
yes.
much, Sil. Yes, we will continue after a short commercial break, and Sil will continue with all these hearing. See you guys after the break.
Dr. RC will share extraordinary resources and services that promote educational success, as well as making a difference in the lives of all social workers, as well as the lives of children, adolescents, and teens of today. She will have open discussions addressing many of the issues that we face about our youth and how being employed in the uniquely skilled profession of social work for over 18 years has taught invaluable lessons through her personal experiences. She will also provide real-life facts, examples, and personal stories that will confirm that why serving as a child advocate is extremely beneficial when addressing the needs of the whole child. Listen live to Dare to Soar, Saturdays, 10 a.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network, and tune in radio as Dr. RC will provide thought-provoking information that will empower, encourage, and strengthen students, families, and communities across our nation. You can also visit her at soarwithkatie.com. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back to the Morness Show with Sil and Beena. And Sil was sharing such really interesting and involved kind of a story. So please, Sil, continue.
All right. So I was using an example of where we can deal with peer pressure without being confrontational or stressful or whatever. And I was using the example of when I stopped drinking, and I was in a culture where drinking was somewhat glorified, right? I used to call it the
Mhm.
booze religion, but anyway, it was a big deal. And so when people would notice I'm not drinking, they would say, "Hey, you're not drinking. What's wrong with you?" Always that, "What's wrong with you?" Like, why aren't you drinking? What's wrong with you? Like I must be, ill or under doctor's orders not to, or something like that, right? So instead of being confrontational, and like I was explaining, because of mentality of opposites, if you do something that's opposite to what people do, they assume it's a criticism, right? Because if
Hmm.
I'm right, then and you right, and you think you're right, well, the opposite of you, which is me, then you must think I'm wrong. See?
Hmm.
That's how that logic works. Right? So anyway, so I would say, I know nothing wrong with me. My body just doesn't like drinking. I just guess I'm unlucky because it doesn't work for me. My body just doesn't like it at all. I mean, you guys, it works for you. Good luck for you. And it's like, yeah, but me, it doesn't work. So I would just say, well, it's my quirkiness, my peculiarity, my oddity. But in me sharing this, I'm making it very clear that I'm not anti you drinking. So, yeah, if you want to, it's like good for you that it works for you. I would say that sometimes still,
Hmm.
that good for you that it works for you. I saw a lot of
Hmm.
them it didn't actually work for them, right? But doesn't matter. That's up to them. They have to make the choices. I can't make the choices for them. That's just a matter of scrupulousness and impeccability and integrity, which is again major parts of Moreness culture. And I never had an issue. Never ever, even though I was very much in that culture and I was an anomaly, I was an exception that didn't drink, didn't matter. Didn't matter. Even now, today, I still get it. It's a different era now than it was then. But even now, it's still sometimes I get it. But
I
again, we can deal with
personally,
it.
yes,
We can deal with it.
I
In other
personally
words,
feel that
just to
you were.
wrap my point up. Sorry, Beena, just to wrap my point. I want to just make it clear that when it comes to dealing with peer pressure, just give it a little bit of thought, understand the psychology, and then you can be deliberately deal with it in a non-stressful, non-confrontational way. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. I assume that you were not doing that. You don't feel that urge to acquiesce this or something because you were deliberately choosing that. When we
Yeah.
deliberately choose
Yeah.
something for ourselves, we don't feel that urge that okay, I need to project it out. I need to like
Correct.
okay, really
Correct. Correct.
share with others and then
Correct.
try to remedy their problems and all those things.
Yeah.
I choose it for myself, and it has nothing to do with other people. That okay, yes, they're doing it's
Right.
their choice, and
Exactly.
I'm celebrating difference right there.
Exactly. And when I make it clear that my body doesn't like it, so I choose not to. Works for you, so you choose to. I don't even have to say you choose to. It's implied,
Mhm.
right? So I make that clear that, hey, I'm exercising my choice. And the key to it is to get out of the mentality of opposites, where I'm saying, oh, this is what I'm doing. And, you see a lot of people sometimes, they get very defensive when they say what they do. Oh, you can see it in my body language. Oh, but that's my thing. Immediately, if you're defensive, you're implying criticism on the other side. I was
But also
never,
when you were
ever,
saying
ever
that
defensive.
but you were giving them a reason that okay my body doesn't okay get well with that,
Exactly.
so it means that you are giving them a reason to not get into attacking and defensive mood,
Exactly.
so you give them
Exactly.
a bit like okay yeah, a subtle tap on
Exactly.
their ego that okay
Exactly.
yeah, I'm not cool
Exactly.
like you, okay.
Right, right,
Works for them.
exactly. I mean, they can take it as they want, but they saw my honesty, and I'm telling them honestly, my body doesn't like it, which is the honest truth, sir. I may
Yes.
personally have reservations about the sensibility of it, and okay, you're doing things because, well, you think you should, and do you get value out of it? And no, you don't really, but that's my personal opinion. If you ask for it, I'll give it to you, but it has nothing to do with my respect for your choice to make stupid decisions.
This is a very, very, very key point because you
Yeah,
actually give us some really what to do in
right.
moreness culture, to be in
Yeah,
moreness culture, to be in really own your moreness, that
yeah.
how to deal with all these things. Okay, so continue with the moreness, deliberate living. Sorry.
All
Sorry to
right.
say.
So let me
Deliberate
just
living,
let me
please.
just elaborate on that point about respect with deliberate respect.
Okay.
A lot of people talk about
Hmm.
respect, but if you
Hmm.
truly believe in respect, then also, shouldn't you then respect somebody's choice to not respect you?
Ah,
You have to, if
it's
you
it's a
believe in
tricky quiz.
respect, you have to respect somebody's choice to not respect you.
Hmm.
Mhm. Changes the whole
Like
thing when you
no,
come at it
no,
so
no.
deliberately, yes?
Yeah, no expectations, of course. Yeah.
Right. So when we were talking about our topic for this week, you
Hmm.
mentioned something about, yeah, but how about the shopkeeper? Right? I don't know. You said something
Hmm.
about the shopkeeper. And
Hmm.
I thought about this. You didn't elaborate because I don't know. We had to go to a
I,
live
I can I
commercial
can I
break.
can I can ask you again because I was asking you that okay, a person who is not into like okay, really thinking deep about things and okay, yeah, the deep stuff or heavy stuff, but he's doing or she's doing, they are doing their mundane job like okay, a shopkeeper
Right,
or a seller, or of course anyone who is doing a regular life jobs like okay, simple things
right,
in life,
right.
and they don't have time to actually go and read books and do all sort
Yeah,
of things,
yeah, yeah,
how
yeah.
they can be part of Moreness culture.
All right. So we've mentioned many ways, but I'm going to specifically connect it to deliberate living. And the
Mhm.
key here is in what I'm going to do is to say, when you go and do your regular job, let's say you're working in a factory and you're doing something that's very repetitive and basically you sort of can tune out and go elsewhere, right? Now, you're being very undeliberate because it's just automated or whatever. You're standing behind a counter in a retail shop, very common job, right? Doesn't mean you cannot be deliberate. The key here is to be aware of abstract concepts. It is
Hmm.
huge in Morness-Culture. We respect, for instance. We just talked about respect, abstract concept. Yes,
Yes,
being
yes.
diplomatic. We said earlier. Yes, practicing diplomacy, practicing strategy. But what about other things? For instance, like patience, tolerance.
Hmm.
Yes, acceptance, practicing listening, hearing. All right, you're in a retail, and I'm using retail as an example because I
Yes.
had retail stores and I spent lots of time behind the counter. The store in the beginning when I had it, 9 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock in the evening, 12-hour shift, just me. That's it, right? Standing behind the counter, right? Every single day, 7 days a week, right? Years on end. So what do I do behind the counter? Well, for one thing, I'm practicing my patience. The one thing I'm practicing
Hmm.
also is my deliberateness. I'm there because I
Hmm.
choose to be there. If I remind myself about this, I say, well, what are your other choices? Your other choices is to build up some other business or whatever, none of the choices were better than that choice. Is this the best choice? Yes. Therefore, I choose to do it. Therefore, I'm happy doing it. Therefore, I want to do it. Am I going somewhere with it? Is it leading somewhere? Yes. It was always going somewhere, right? Even though it
Hmm.
might take a long time, spent 10 years having the retail. We had multiple stores at
Wow.
some point, but
Wow.
yeah, 10 years, right? Yeah, eventually we had employees and all that, and we had 4 stores and whatever. But it doesn't matter, I was doing it deliberately. Same thing when we did, before that, we did the flea market. Because when we came to this country, at least when I came, at nothing, right? Start from scratch.
Hmm.
And I've started from scratch a couple of times, just how my wonderful life adventures went, right? I mean, I had a good business and then things changed and then we started all over again, right? And not in a negative way, just because I was pursuing the spiritual quest. So we let go of a very profitable, very good business to pursue the spiritual part, and doing that to start all over again. Anyway, doesn't matter. But when you do it deliberately, when you see and you clear, right? Part of deliberateness is clarity of intent. How many times haven't you heard us talk about clarity of intent? Yes? Clarity of intent, it's module one, session one of the Way of Impeccability Life Change Program. Yeah?
Hmm.
Self-change and life change program. It is
Hmm.
huge. Clarity of intent is all about deliberateness, is it not, Beena?
Oh, yes, of course. Of
You
course.
being you
I can say that because I'm part of it. But
yes.
as a common person, yes, I know that it's not out there. It's not
Yeah.
very common. It's you
No,
don't see
no.
that, you don't hear
Right.
that. Yes.
But clarity of intent is being aware of your purpose, being aware of your goal, being aware of your choices. But it's taking goals and choice and motivation and purpose and taking it all the way and going
Hmm.
further and going and saying, well, what about your intent? Yeah. Intent is different to having a goal. Different. So it's too much to get into now, but at some point we will go into the detail of it. But nonetheless, we can just say clarity of purpose, clarity of goal, clarity of focus, right? Doesn't matter.
Yes.
When you have clarity, you've thought about your goals. You've thought about your purpose. You've thought about your objectives. When you've thought about them, you've looked at all the different options and you've chosen that option, right? And if you've done this thoroughly, which brings us to a point, a major tool of Way of Impeccability and thus of Morness-Culture is perspective shifting to multiple perspectives and thinking things through to the end. When you do that, you've got a range of choices, and the thing that you're choosing on, you've thought it through to the end, so you know it's complete, and you've been deliberate about this, and now, whatever choice you make, you're making it clear. You're not making it because, well, this is the only thing I could choose. No, you've looked at all the choices. You've thought it through. So it's deliberate, right? So these two techniques, which are fundamental and core to Way of Impeccability and Morness-Culture, they are both techniques for making sure we are deliberate. Yeah, Beena?
Wow.
Make sense?
Yes.
Make sense?
Yes.
Huge
It does
deal.
make sense.
Huge
It
deal.
does make sense.
So now we're leveraging deliberateness so that when we choose, I am behind my choice. I'm doing this because I want to. I want to stand behind that counter. I want to be on that production line.
Taking
I'll
full
talk about
responsibility,
more.
in other words.
Right, but I want to go to the moreness. Yeah, exactly. Not only taking full responsibility, but being deliberate. Because when I'm deliberate, I'm empowered. I'll have more examples after the break.
Okay, yes. So thank you so much, Sil, for sharing. We will see you guys after a short commercial break.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Mike Zorek, a 3-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a 6-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2 thirds, and 2 fourths. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Hello and welcome back to the Moreness Show with Sil and Beena, and Sil will continue what he was sharing just before the commercial break. Please, Sil.
I was talking about deliberateness being applied in our everyday lives. Like when you're at the job and work and Beena says, well, maybe it's not the most exciting job and you're just doing it. And I was really making the point about being there because you choose to be there. And if you can't justify it, then don't be there. Find something else, right? Don't do it because you should do it. Choose it deliberately. And you might say, well, it's the only job I can get and it sucks. Okay, so what? Then still choose it deliberately because the alternative is worse. But let's now take deliberateness and combine it with moreness, because we're talking about Moreness-Culture, right? Now, how do I bring moreness into my boring job? Instead of me standing behind the counter servicing customers, right? Why can't I also simultaneously Be doing a whole ton of practicing. What can I all practice? Could I be practicing patience?
Yes.
Yes. Could I be
Yes.
practicing tolerance?
Yes.
Could I be practicing capital H hearing to really listen to the customers?
Yes.
Yes. I could be practicing developing integrity. I've got other co-workers and they goofing off and they doing, do I have to follow along with them?
No.
No. So in other words, I can practice my integrity. I can also practice
Yeah.
developing independence of being. I can practice being strategic in terms of how I deal with them, right? I can practice developing capital diplomacy. When they say, come on, man, just come and join us. You don't have to be standing there all the time. The boss is not here now. And they want to essentially have you be party to them, their lack of integrity, right? But now you're in a difficult position. It's peer pressure. So you can practice developing independence of being, capital diplomacy, dealing with that, right? But let's assume you just start a job on your own, like in the store there, or on my own, right? I can practice being alone.
Oh, wow.
What a skill! What a skill to develop. Yeah, it's part of patience. Patience is usually when we are impatient, we are stressful with the need to wait, right? It's waiting with stress. That is what impatience is.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
if you are patient, you learn to wait without stress. What is the best way to be able to wait without stress? Wouldn't that be to feel good within yourself? Yeah. So I can
Yes.
practice feeling good in part of Way-Of-Impeccability, part of Morness-Culture, mood management, deliberately choosing our mood. Huge. We didn't even get there yet, but we're getting there now. So part of deliberate living is mood management, or deliberately choosing your moods. Deliberately choosing your moods. I said this once on one of our lives, and somebody was there, said, what do you mean deliberately choose your mood? You can't do that. Says who?
Yes.
I know many people who do it. I do it on a regular basis. Beena does on a regular basis. It's just something you have to practice. It's a skill like everything else. But they were so undeliberate in their living that they had come to believe that it was not possible. But now you're on your job there, whether you're standing on a production line in the store, whatever you do in construction, you're the guy holding up the sign that says wait or whatever, slow, whatever. Yeah, you're just standing there all day. Practice feeling good. What do you care if you're standing there? Somebody's paying me to stand around and feel good all day. What do I care? It's not stressful. If I'm feeling good, it's not stressful. Yeah, it's not an onus. And what
Because the
about
idea is that feelings are automatic.
correct? But again, when we have deliberate living, the moreness of it is that we start to realize, well, if I'm really going to apply deliberate living and I take it all the way, doesn't that by implication means I have to be deliberate about how I feel about things? Yeah. As I said
Yes.
earlier, when you deliberately choose to do things, it leverages your internal motivation. Yeah, because I want to do it, I automatically feel better about it, and I'm able to deal with things that otherwise would be very stressful, like with eating the horrible foods in Survivor, or the undercover agent going into the maximum security prison. Yeah, they don't suffer the way the other prisoners are because they're there by choice. Yeah, changes everything. You're empowered to do things you couldn't otherwise do. All right, so now let's take that special agent. Yeah. So you're a secret special agent, and your mission means you have to go and be in the retail store, stand behind the counter. Suddenly it's all exciting. Yeah. You have to be scrupulous. You can't give up. You can't let any of the other employees, you can't slip up and say something, say, hey, but right. So you have to be deliberate in every single action. It's one of the techniques of Way-Of-Impeccability to think of being a special agent of the universe. Yeah? You're on a mission. Yeah? And now when you're doing every single thing deliberately, man, what an empower, what a high, what a trip. It's an adventure. It's exciting. It's exciting standing behind the counter being a special agent. It's exciting.
Change of perspective. Yes.
Leveraging the self through being deliberate. deliberately choosing your perspective, deliberately choosing your mood, deliberately choosing your attitude, deliberately choosing your mindset, deliberately choosing your attitudes, deliberately choosing your beliefs, deliberately choosing everything, including deliberately choosing choice. How awesome is
Oh,
that?
wow. Oh, this is so wonderful.
Right? So I want to just wrap up this section that I said here, because we're coming to the end, to say that what we can do, maybe you don't remember all the things, but just choose to practice being more. Doesn't matter what you think that means. Well,
Mm,
like patience.
mhm,
Okay, I'm going to practice being patient. That's a moreness to my regular way of being. Yeah, just practice
mm.
that. Practice mood manager. Do them one at a time. You don't have to do them all together, right? But when you are practicing, whatever situation you are in, you're doing your job and you are practicing something extra, some abstract quality, some mood, some
Mm.
attitude, some mindset. Practice, 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 practice. If you do things, isn't practice deliberate? At
Oh,
least if you're going to
yes.
practice well. If you're just doing it by rote and mindlessly, then it's not very good practice, right? For practice to
Yes.
be effective, it's a deliberate activity and that is geared towards improvement. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And part of practice is doing things wrong. That's how you learn.
Wow.
Deliberately doing things wrong.
Hmm.
Deliberately doing things wrong. Yeah. Very important. Very good place to practice. So try, experiment. Yeah. Change up, do things differently, move around. Now, this is when you
Hmm.
deliberately experiment, you push the boundaries, you see what you can do. You try things, you try a different voice, you try a different stance, you try a different walk, you try a different face, you try different feelings, you try different attitudes. Oh my goodness, this is practice. You don't have to get it right. Practice is about also getting it wrong. You have to understand. You're playing on the violin, yo-yo ma. It makes a horrible sound. Okay, I know when I do this of that, and he knows not to do that next time. You're going to get that result. You need that. You need to know where the boundaries are. And the only way you actually know where boundaries are is when you cross them.
Hmm. Interesting.
Otherwise, you're just guessing. You don't actually know where it is until you cross it. So you have to cross those boundaries a little bit, yeah? You have to go way over,
Yes.
just a little bit. It's very, very important. So deliberate living is a huge deal, and it is massively life-enhancing and empowering. Right, Beena?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you so much, sir, for sharing such moreness about the show and, of course, the moreness culture and the deliberate living. We will see you guys next week with more fun and, of course, moreness. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Bye for
Bye-bye,
now.
everybody. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
This has been The Morness Show with Sil and Beena. Tune in each week as they focus on bringing joy and peace of being to us all. Thursdays, 9 p.m. Eastern on the Bold, Brave TV network. Powered by B2 Studios.